Hi, this is Kush from creativepadphotography.com. Welcome back to the Photoshop tutorial for beginners video series. Again, this is a short video. We're going to be looking at a tool called Smart Sharpen. So let's get into it. We'll also be using the concept of layer masking here that we learned in the last video. So I'm going to open this image, a wildlife shot, and so this is the original, and I've attached this image in the description of this video, so you can just access this. You can download it and work along with me. Okay, so we have this image. The first thing, of course, I'm going to do, as you often have to do in wildlife shots, is to crop this image. So I'm just going to give it a central composition, and just gonna crop this. Right, so right now it has some contrast issues, so I'm just going to quickly not touch our original. This will be like a good revision for us. I'm just going to go to camera raw filter and just going to increase the contrast a bit. You know, often here what you can do is just click on auto, and if it does a decent enough job, sometimes it's fine. I'm just going to quickly reduce the exposure a bit, reduce the contrast a bit. Okay, it's just some basic editing, and the reason I opened this up is because the tool that we are learning right now, it's called Smart Sharpen, and it's used basically to sharpen your shots. So in the previous video we learned about Gaussian blur. So that's used to blur something. For example, in that video we used it to blur noise, but sometimes you might want your image to be more sharper than it already is. That's where you'll use a sharpening tools. Now there are a lot of ways to sharpen on Photoshop. There are like almost 5 to 6 ways. I'm just going to show you today the easiest way, which is to use the Smart Sharpen tool, and it's absolutely fine as a beginner to use that. Later on in some videos when we go towards the advanced ones, I'll show you some other ways also. Before we go on to the Smart Sharpen one, another very quick way of sharpening your shots is using this clarity tool. So if I just push this up, you can see that our image gets a bit sharper, but I usually don't resort to this a lot because you can see it just gives a slightly unnatural look to our shot, you know. So you can just maybe bump it up a bit, but we're going to just leave it at 0. There are other ways to sharpen right from camera raw filter, but as I said, we're going to be looking at that later because I want to show you the easiest possible way. So I'm just going to click on OK, and we just have improved the contrast in this image, so we can get we can work on this. So I'm just going to create one more duplicate layer. Okay, and now I'm just going to open filter, sharpen, and I'm going to select Smart Sharpen. So what it shows you here is I can just zoom it out a bit, right? So we just have to move these sliders a bit, and what's basically going to do is going to add some sharpness to our shot. So if I press my mouse button here, you can see it's going to show me what is before, and if I release it, it's going to show me what will be the effect of the sharpening the sliders. So you can see with this much amount we're kind of getting our image. So what I suggest you do is just pull them all back, especially the amount and radius are very important. So right now you can see there's no effect, and you can I always recommend just go by your eye. Don't like push it too far. So you can see if I do this, it starts to get a very unnatural look. So of course we're not going to do that. You can decrease the radius a bit, and so there's no right or wrong way. Just play around till the time you find that right combination which you're trying to leave. Don't increase the radius too much because that's when the main problem comes. So once you're happy with your radius setting, you can just increase or decrease the amount of sharpness here. So let's look at the before and after. Now, one thing you have to understand is that when you sharpen using any of the tools, even the advanced ones, it definitely will add some noise to your shot. So you can see I've sharpened this, and if you just see this background here in our bokeh here, you can see we've started to get some noise. But that's not a problem for us because we'll anyway be using a layer mask and to restrict our sharpening only to the bird's body and mainly towards the bird's eye. Right, so just focus not on this, just focus on the main areas that you want to sharpen. So I'm just going to pull this down a bit, maybe even the radius a bit. Okay, that looks fine. You can see we've clearly made this shot a bit sharper. I'm going to click on OK. And of course now this has applied the whole sharpening filter to this, or this tool to the whole of the image, but we don't want it on our background, so we're just going to open our layer mask. If you haven't seen the video on layer mask, that's the video part 10, 2 parts before this, so I definitely recommend you go through that. And of course what we want to do is that since we open this up, I want to invert this filter. That means I want to turn it totally black so that we lose the effect of our sharpening tool. So basically, since it's black, you know that the layer below, which was our original, is showing through, right? And what we do then is, just like we did in the Gaussian blur video, we'll simply select white here. I'm just going to raise the opacity of the brush, and I'm only going to run it on the bird. So if I zoom in, you start to see the effect. So right now it's not affecting any of our background because we have a black mask on, but you can see if I start to run the white paintbrush on it, only on the bird, it will start to make it white, and you'll start to see the sharpening effect only on the bird. So wherever you want the detail on your subject to be seen more, that's where you can work with this tool. Now you can see that, you know, like for example in this area here, we don't have too much detail, so the noise shows more. The same amount of noise is generating over here, but it's not visible to the eye because of all the details. So that's where you have to be careful. But since you have a layer mask, that's the beauty of it. You can just turn this to black, and suppose I feel the noise is showing a bit on this part of the bird's body, I can just hide this because it's not really required, right? Even on this wire here, I think this is the noise is showing. Of course, the first way out of this is that when you're actually doing it from the slider, when you're selecting, you can just decrease the value a bit. I did not really pay too much attention to that, but make sure you really zoom into the preview section you get there when you're using this tool, and you can judge you know, whether the amount of sliders, whether you pushed it too far or not, by judging the amount of noise that you're getting. But some amount of noise will always be there. That's the downside of sharpening shots. So we can see some noises come here, so I'm just going to hide this. So I think if we just restrict our sharpening only to this part of the bird, the eye and the feathers here, I think that is looking fine. So if I just hide this now, you'll see our original below. So you can see we just lose that bit of sharpness. And if I unhide this, you can see that we start to get the sharpening on the subject back. So we've been able to isolate, using layer mask, the effect of sharpening only to this part of the bird, and now our shot looks much sharper than what our original shot was, right? So if I zoom out, the effect is going to be very subtle. So I'm not sure if you can notice this on the YouTube video, because there's a loss of quality, but when I'm seeing it on my screen right now, I can clearly see that there's a decent amount of change, and it has to be subtle. That's what you have to remember about sharpening it. You don't push it too much, so it starts to get that unreal look, right? So this looks fine. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to open another image just to show you one more example. So I'm going to open this because this is another area where I like to use sharpening a lot. So you have this candid shot, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to create a duplicate, and whenever I see this nice texture on the skin of some person's face, usually I first of all turn it into black and white, but that's not really required, but we're still just going to do that anyway. So I'm just going to go to camera raw filter. I'm just going to turn this, let's say, just for the sake of simplicity, I'm just going to turn the saturation down, just going to increase the contrast a bit, just decrease the exposure slightly. Okay, so we got this image, and whenever I have black and white images like these and a good amount of texture, not just on the skin, but let's say you have a wooden surface or anything which has texture, I usually like to add some sharpening to that, and just to make it stand out. So I'm just going to create a duplicate layer of this. Later on, when we go to the advanced videos, we don't even have to do this duplication, because I'm going to show you something called a smart object, where again, it's a non-destructive way of doing things, but for beginners this is fine right now, just the layer masking way on duplicate layers. So I'm just going to open the Smart Sharpen tool here, and Zoom it out a bit. So just pay attention to the, to his cheek here, because that's where the most of the texture is that you want to show. And in these cases, sometimes I don't even mind pushing things slightly more. So I think this looks good. Yep, so maybe just a bit more, to be careful, of course. Okay, so if I just hide this, and you can see, just pay the attention, you can see this hair, they really stand out when you sharpen them. The texture on the, the stubble here, you can see it really stands out more, and the overall texture just looks more catchy in these portrait shots, where the candid shots, where you want this texture to really stand out. And of course, now you can see that the background here, where there was no detail, starts to show a bit of noise. So you can approach it the same way. Just open up a layer mask, invert this, and select your white brush, and just run it on any part of the skin that you want the sharpening to show. So let's say we did not want to sharpen this part, the forehead, because maybe this had already had texture. So you can just leave it and just do it on areas there. And let's say the hair were looking good when they were sharp, so you can go back and kind of run it on this. So we've just sharpened this on areas where we need it. So you can sharpen on the areas here where there's a lot of detail. It just starts to pop a bit out. So you can see, if I just hide this is the original, and just pay attention to the cheek, the hair, and the shirt. You'll see this the moment I unhide this. So great amount of sharpening that comes, and this just makes the image pop out and look good. Another area where you can use this is just normal portraits, where you don't want to, let's say especially if it's a female portrait and you want the skin to be soft. So later on I'll be making videos on something called as frequency separation. There what we do is it's basically a smooth skin smoothing technique. So what we do is we make the whole image smooth so that the skin becomes smooth, but again we can use a sharpening tool, use a mask, and only sharpen areas where the skin smoothing effect should not blur things. Like for example, you still want the eyes to be sharp for the person, you still want the lips to be sharp, even in female portraits, right? So what we do is we use the technique of frequency separation to smoothen the skin, but then we use a sharpening tool just to restrict our sharpening to eyes, lips, jewelry, clothes, and let the smoothing effect only remain on the cheeks and the other parts of the skin where they're supposed to be smooth. So you can I normally use this tool, just like I've been showing you, to basically isolate and work on a particular area which I want to sharpen. So sometimes in wildlife shots, I'll just sharpen the eye of the bird, that's all, because maybe the feathers are already sharp, but you still want the eye to stand out, and maybe if it wasn't too sharp, you can just sharpen it a bit, and it makes a huge difference. So this is a tool I use a lot. Another example I can give you is for food photography shots. Food usually has a lot of texture, so whenever you see texture, try to use this, because it's just going to make things pop out. And wherever you see noise come up and you feel it's not required on this area, you can use a layer mask and just do it the way we've been doing. So I hope this video helped you. I'll see you in the next video. Do give it a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe. I'll see you in the next video. Bye for now.